Well, to talk more about that, I've got Randall Wray in Annandale, New York. He is a professor of economics at the University of Missouri at Kansas City. Well, let's talk about this. I know that you argue that, in fact, this notion of a shock doctrine. You wrote that President Obama has joined forces with Republicans who want to use the debt limit to remove the last vestiges of FDR's New Deal, the last of the Rooseveltian-inspired programs, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And you say it's up to Obama to kill those. So talk about this. I mean, are we in the midst of a crisis, as everyone says we are?
Well, we're in a created crisis, but it's a political crisis. It's not an economic crisis. The sovereign government does not face a solvency constraint. If it does default on debt, it will be a political decision. It's not going to be something that is forced by markets.
So you think that this is perhaps just an excuse by the forces out there to try to get rid of some of these New Deal, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that the Democrats have helped to create this crisis. And as I said, only a Democratic president really can kill New Deal programs. President Clinton was the one who destroyed the regulation of the financial sector that was put in place in the aftermath of the 1930s Great Depression. That had protected the economy and prevented another financial crash on the scale of the 1929 crash up until the current crisis. And we had deregulated, desupervised financial institutions. Basically, we let them repeat what they had done back in 1929 that caused the crisis. So now it's up to Obama to get rid of the final vestiges of the New Deal, which are the social safety net that is protecting the population.
I want to talk more about a heated exchange that took place yesterday between Texas Congressman Ron Paul and Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke over the actions both Congress and the Fed have taken to deal with some of these problems that we've seen over the last 3 years. I want to show you a little bit of that exchange in what seems to be two very different interpretations of what's going on.
Okay.
The $5.1 trillion didn't go to the consumers. It went to buying bad assets. It went to bailing out banks. It went to bailing out big companies. And lo and behold, the consumer didn't end up getting this. They lost their job, and they lost their houses and mortgages, and they're still in trouble.
You're mistaken in saying that the Federal Reserve has spent any money. You say $5 trillion. We have lent money. We have purchased securities. That's not buying. That's not dissipating the money. We've gotten all the money back.
Bernanke then went on to say that the Fed has in fact been a profit center, a moneymaker for the U.S. government. Your thoughts on this notion? Is the Fed actually, a profit center?
Well, actually, the number is probably closer to $29 trillion if we count the total lending, guaranteeing, and buying of toxic waste assets undertaken by the Fed and Treasury. It's $29 trillion. I think that Bernanke is playing that a little bit fast and loose. The Fed still has a lot of toxic waste on its balance sheets. Probably it is valuing that as something that will never be realized. So I think the Fed probably is going to take a loss on some of the toxic waste that it purchased, possibly on some of the loans that it has made. So I actually agree with that critique. I don't think we should have done it. And the criticism that not much has trickled down to Main Street is obvious.
I think a lot of people would agree with that, people who are out of work or who've lost their homes. Let's get another interpretation of the role of the Federal Reserve, this one coming from Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin.
Fortunately or unfortunately, we do not print reserve currencies. But look at what they're doing, acting like hooligans. They're switching on the printing press, tossing money around the whole world, fulfilling their primary needs. They say monopoly is bad, but this statement concerns only someone else's monopoly. Well, there's nothing bad about their monopoly, the monopoly for printing money, and they're making the most of it. But we cannot afford it. We cannot shift all our expenses to budget deficit.
Putin there, of course, talking about quantitative easing and putting this money back, just printing more, and calling the Fed hooligans. What do you think about this?
Well, I think that this is overstated. Look, the money that the Fed is lending and spending to buy toxic waste is not getting out there into the economy or into the rest of the world. If it were actually getting out into the economy, we would not still be in a deep recession. We wouldn't have an unemployment rate above 9%. The fact is that the money that is being created by the Fed is called bank reserves. It's all locked up in the reserves of the banks, which actually are held at the Fed. They don't get out into the economy. It would only be if somehow the Fed's actions had encouraged banks to start lending again and American consumers to start spending again, the dollars would be getting out into the U.S. and world economies. They are not.
So you think all this money that's being printed isn't even actually going out there back into the economy?
Yeah, using the printing metaphor, I think, is very misleading. As Bernanke said, these are just keystrokes. All the Fed is doing when it buys, let's say, toxic waste from a bank, all it does is it credits the bank's asset, which is a reserve at the Fed, and the Fed's, that is the Fed's liability. The Fed takes the toxic waste as its asset. No money leaves the banking system.
All right, Randall Wray, professor of economics at the University of Missouri, Kansas City.